Hello, welcome back. Right, I'm filming this on a Logitech C920 webcam, which Amazon were punting out for 30 quid last week. And I don't normally use webcams, but I thought it might be nice to have something as a backup for in case anything ever happened to the phone, which I usually use to record stuff on my Huawei Mate 20 Pro. That's what I usually use. And I thought, yeah, okay, why not at that price? I'm probably not going to use it that often, but like I say, it's nice to have a backup. Now already you can see that the spotlights up there are glaring quite badly off my big fat bald ponce, and I can't really do anything about that. If I turn the lights off, then it becomes too dark. I did sort of try, but hey ho, I'm not going to use this very often, I don't think, so it's just giving it a go. Now, as you can see from the title of the video, this is the first video of the 2020s, and this marks the start of the 5th decade for me of gaming and being into sort of like electronic games and entertainment, not necessarily just computers and consoles, etc. But we'll have a lot sort of discussion about that. And those of you of the same vintage of me, sort of like born in the early 70s, you'll be the same age and you'll be in exactly the same position. And God, it makes me feel old. So it's just a sort of a little reminisce to go through you know, what I experienced over the years through the sort of like various decades. Now, I haven't written a script or anything. This is all just off the top of my head. If I get something wrong or miss something out, by all means, please correct me. I haven't done it on purpose. Like I say, it's just I haven't researched anything. I'm just opening my mouth and sort of spouting stuff out. So the 70s for me, like I said, is where it all sort of started. At the age of about 5 or 6, I would have been sort of like 1977. And the first thing I can remember is having one of those Binatone TV games, you know, the ones with sort of like 4 different variants of Pong on them, tennis, football, a couple of others, etc. And we got so much fun out of that, my brother and I, despite the fact that nowadays it is incredibly primitive looking. And also round about that time, arcade machines, we'd sort of like started to see a sort of couple of them in the 70s. I've got to be careful, make sure I get the dates sort of right to ensure that I'm putting things in the right decade, but I think I can remember seeing a Space Invaders machine and Asteroids machines. But the majority of the rest of the decade and into the early 80s was also taken up with the electronic tabletop games like the grandstand games, particularly in the early part of the 80s, the likes of Astro Wars, Scramble, Dracula, the Nintendo Game & Watches. Now, those Game & Watches, I remember my first experience of them was we went on a camping trip for 2 weeks to the north of France. And it was something like an 8-hour ferry journey from Portsmouth across to France. And for the boat journey, my mum and dad had bought us Parachute and Fire Game & Watch games to keep us occupied. And again, those tiny little things got so much play, and that range expanded sort of massively the Game & Watch games. But those are the only 2 I can ever really sort of like remember experiencing. Fire involved people jumping out of a burning building and you being an ambulance technician, having to catch them on a stretcher and bounce them across into an ambulance where they would be safe. And I think after a while it got banned, and Parachute was where you piloted a rowing boat back and forth across like a lagoon or whatever, and patrolling the lagoon was a shark, and you had people jumping out of a helicopter with their parachutes, and you had to try and catch them and return them to safety. Any that landed in the drink were shark fodder. And great fun, massive fun with those games. Now, as the 80s started, obviously, like with the ZX80 computer from Sinclair was released, and then I've never ever seen or used one of those machines. I've seen one in the Science Museum in London. Went there just recently, actually, and saw, just have a drink of Coke, and saw one. But I've never used one. So if you owned one of those machines back in the day, or if you own one now, by all means, please share your memories of them. Now, my first home computer was a ZX81, which I actually got in 1983, and I've touched on this before, and it was Fantastic machine, and I can remember vividly the problems with it, with its RAM pack. You know, the slightest overly heavy touch on the computer would wobble the RAM pack and the whole thing would crash. But we had great fun with that game. You know, Veal Lord Such still covers the ZX81 quite heavily on his channel. Go and check it out, especially if you're interested to see what the machine was actually capable of, because there's some modern games still being released for it, which is, you know, absolutely fantastic. But the 80s were sort of full of computers and choice and stuff like that. One of the things I should have mentioned about the 70s was, of course, the Atari 2600. Now, I never owned one, was jealous of friends, etc., that had them. Never had any of those kind of consoles apart from the Binatone one that I've mentioned. But the 80s, sort of computer-wise, the choice was spectacular. You had like the VIC-20, Commodore 64, you had the Sinclair Spectrum, MSX, the Amstrad machines, the BBC Micro, which is an absolutely fantastic machine, the Dragon range of machines, the Oryx, the Acorn Electrons, etc. The Atari 8-bits, that's something that I keep on forgetting to mention whenever I do one of these videos, because from what I've seen of them, they are incredibly capable machines and have quite a big fan base. So whatever your memories of that particular era are, please share them in the sort of descriptions box below, the comments, sorry, share them in the comments below to generate some sort of discussion on them, and what you think of those machines now. Is it an era that you've totally turned your back on, etc., but you like to watch YouTube videos every now and then just to sort of pique your memory? Do you actively, like a lot of us do, hunt down the computers, own them, play games on them still? Do you know any of the homebrew stuff that's being released? What are your memories of walking down the high street, looking in computer shops, etc., etc.? Now, as the 80s came to an end, obviously the sort of Amiga, Atari ST computers became sort of much more popular and sort of really challenged the sort of dominance of the 8-bit machines and eventually sort of took over. I never ever owned either of those machines, and it's something that to this day, you know, it's a big gap in my sort of computing history, and at some point I'd like to sort of fill that, but I'm not in any particular rush to at the moment, if you know what I mean. Now, I didn't move from the Spectrum to the Amiga or the ST. I actually went straight from the Spectrum to the Sega Master System in about 1989 to 1990, and really enjoyed that system. Games like Populous, the Sonic the Hedgehog version for it, Alex Kidd in Miracle World, yeah, everyone sort of loved that one, the built-in game. Never had a Mega Drive, although my brother did, and we enjoyed playing a lot of games on that, particularly the two-player games such as the original PGA Tour Golf games before they were sort of Tiger Woods sort of licenses on later generations of consoles. And they were great fun. I had a Super Nintendo, and I had massive fun with games like Shadowrun. My parents brought me back from America a game called Soul Blazer by Square or Enix. It's Square Enix, I can't remember who it was by. But bearing in mind I'm not a huge fan of the RPG style sort of games, that one, and Legend of Zelda was really sort of massive on the SNES at the time. But I really had a good time with Soul Blazer. It was great, and because it was an American cartridge, I obviously had a UK SNES. I had to get an adapter to put into the cartridge so that I could put the American cartridge on top and a UK cartridge on the back, and then fit the whole lot into the SNES cartridge slot so I could play the game. But yeah, it was a great game. Like I say, Shadowrun was just wonderful, really atmospheric, great game. Super Tennis I used to love. Pilot Wings was good fun. And I'm sort of really struggling to sort of like think of any kind of other games that I had back in the day. I did fall for the hype and buy Street Fighter 2 when it was first released, about 60 odd quid, but never really did anything sort of like, never really sort of like got into it at all. Hang on, the old computer screen's just gone off there. So yeah, I had some great fun with those machines, and from there, the next ones I bought would have been the Atari Jaguar and the 3DO that I owned at the same time. And in hindsight, I wish I'd kept them because they had some really great games for them. The Jaguar was the first time I ever experienced Doom in any of its versions at all, and I thought it was a fantastic version, a really great game. A game called Iron Soldier, Tempest 2000, had a brilliant version of Cannon Fodder as well, which was great fun. On the 3DO games, I used to enjoy a Sherlock Holmes game, sort of like a CD-ROM FMV heavy sort of detective style game. Its version of FIFA, the original sort of like tarted up 32-bit version of FIFA with like the 3D graphics, just blew me away at the time, even though in hindsight the gameplay was actually a bit piggish. I had one of the original Madden games on it that I used to like playing, and the boxing game. But I never had games like the Need for Speed and stuff like that. I got quite frustrated with both the Jaguar and the 3DO in that at the time there didn't seem to be an awful lot of great stuff coming out for them. So by the time I moved on from those two onto the PlayStation 1, I literally just chucked them both in the bin. And it's a move I hugely regret making nowadays because, like I say, I actually had, although there wasn't much that I could find that was fun to play, what there was really, really good. Oh, Theme Park as well on the 3DO I used to like. I'd also had an original Game Boy at some point in the 90s, but didn't really, and a Game Gear, but didn't really get much use out of either of them before sort of like they ended up being sort of consigned to drawers and stuff like that. Now, just it illustrates what I'm saying. I'm all over the place a bit already. So from the PS1, the original Resident Evil I thought was absolutely spectacular, although to this day what ruined it for me was the control system. It was horrendous, and they never really fixed it for me until Resident Evil 4 on the GameCube. What other games did I used to play on that? I had Wipeout because everyone was going on about it, but I kind of didn't get on too well with it. Some of the drops and everything, I used to get like motion sickness from it. You know, it was like so quick, and some of the sort of drops, etc., were just nausea inducing for me. Tomb Raider games, I didn't really get on with them either. Other PlayStation games, PS1 games that I used to like. The original Gran Turismo, I got an awful lot of play out of that. I remember finding it quite tricky at first when doing all the medals and tests and everything like that. But in the end, actually sort of like quite enjoying it. I also had, no, did I? Other things that I owned in the 90s, I got a Dreamcast, which everyone knows is a fantastic machine, but, you know, had the shortest life of any of them, I think, just a sort of couple of years, really. And it's such a shame because games like Power Stone were fantastic. A Confidential Mission, a light gun game, Sega Bass Fishing. My boy was only about 5 years old at the time, and we had great fun playing that, and we sometimes still sort of talk about it. It was a really good machine. Really enjoyed the PlayStation, sorry, the Dreamcast. Going into the 2000s, I had the PlayStation 2, the GameCube, and the original Xbox all at the same time. GameCube I really enjoyed. I loved Eternal Darkness, Sanity's Requiem, Resident Evil 4, the first Resident Evil game I really got into and sort of like massively enjoyed. Beyond Good and Evil was great. Rogue Squadron, didn't have the Mario Kart. What was the Mario game for the GameCube? I never got on too well with Mario games, but oh no, let's go back. Yeah, Nintendo 64 I had in the 1990s as well, before the GameCube, and had some great games on it. I used to love Stunt Race FX, GoldenEye of course, Perfect Dark, even better. Not so keen on the original Turok, but the second one was great, and I never played the third. Other games, yeah, Mario Kart 64 always seemed to get quite a bit of heat, that one, but I always quite enjoyed it. But there you go. Anyway, sort of like going back, yeah, GameCube, I've sort of mentioned, great game. The Wavebird wireless controller was really, really good, really, really nice. For the original Xbox, that's where I first encountered the Splinter Cell games, and I really enjoyed those, having never got into the Metal Gear Solid games. I found those excellent. The first one was okay, playable enough. The second one, Pandora Tomorrow, was much better. And the third one, Chaos Theory, well, that was just an absolutely stunning game. I had so much fun with that game. It was fantastic. Microsoft Lynx Golf as well. It was one of my first experiences of online play on a console, on Xbox Live. Had great fun with that. It really was very enjoyable. Was Project Gotham Racing on the original Xbox or the 360? I don't know, so I'll pass on that one. But loads and loads of great games, and often think sometimes of getting another one. The only problem with those is the size of them. They are mind-bogglingly big compared to anything else that was around at the time. PlayStation 2, games like Psyops, Burnout 3, absolutely wonderful games. You know, so much playability. For me, Burnout 3 is, you know, one of the games of the last sort of like 15, 20 years that I've had the most fun with. Black was also brilliant fun. What else did I have on the PlayStation 2? I had used to play an awful lot of Pro Evolution Soccer. That was an excellent game. I used to be quite into the football games, and they used to be PES rather than FIFA sort of back then, although I don't really play either of them now anymore. PlayStation 2, Xbox, GameCube. Then I went on to the 360 and PS3 in the sort of late 2000s. Played an awful lot of Tiger Woods games on the 360. Had great fun with that. Again, I'm going to zoom back. How on earth could I miss out Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic on the original Xbox and its sequel? Although it wasn't as good, it was still a great game. Absolutely fantastic games, being a Star Wars nut as I am. Really enjoyed those. The Mass Effect games as well. Tiger Woods, Mass Effect 1, 2 and 3. What else was there that I used to play? One of the Splinter Cell games as well, Conviction. And the original sort of Call of Duty World at War was fantastic, and so was the original Black Ops. And after that, I kind of got a bit bored with Call of Duty and sort of like online shooters and whatnot. They all seem to be sort of quite samey. Now, PlayStation 3, I really enjoyed Heavy Rain. That was a very, very good game because I'd played its predecessor, Fahrenheit, on PS2. What else? The problem with this is I had games that were released on both systems, and oftentimes I would have it on sort of... I very rarely had the same game on each system because there's no point. But what games did I have on the PS3? My girls loved the Little Big Planet games, so they got really quite a large amount of play. Did I have... Very difficult to remember what I actually had on the PlayStation 3. And moving into this sort of like current generation in the 10s, the Xbox and the PlayStation. Oh, we had the Lego games on the PlayStation 3 a lot again, because the girls really sort of enjoyed playing them. Had sort of great fun with them. And going into the 2010s, it was still the Xbox 360 and the PS3 up until such time as the PS4 came out. I did have an Xbox One for about a month, but I didn't like it, so I got rid of it. And I didn't see that there was much point having an Xbox and a PS4 And I must admit, I've said this before, this is the kind of generation where I've kind of fallen out of love with modern gaming a little bit, and spend most of my time playing sort of old games on the Spectrum, etc., and everything. Because like when I got the latest Call of Duty game, it was about 3 hours from plugging the game in, sorry, putting the disc into my console to actually being able to play it, because of installs and updates and stuff like that. And you know, they're just obscene sizes nowadays, and that to me sort of like kicked all the fun out of it, really. I really loved Detroit Become Human, because I'd liked Heavy Rain, because I'd liked Fahrenheit. But other than that, I've not really played an awful lot this gen. The Last Guardian was very good, but once you'd completed it, there wasn't really kind of much sort of need to, I didn't think, to sort of go back and sort of try it again. But as a feat, it was fantastic. And so here we are. I've got a Switch as well, but I don't use that much either. I've got Sega Mega Drive Classics on it, and Breath of the Wild, which came with it. Now, I know there's an awful lot of indie stuff available for it that looks absolutely fantastic. I just haven't got around to doing any of it, getting any of it. Like I say, I tend to like the old style stuff even more. Now, this has been a horrifically long, rambly video. This has gone on for 21 odd minutes. I already know I've been all over the place with it. I've missed out a lot of information. There was a lot of umming and ahhing. I hadn't written anything down. I just opened my mouth and spewed about this being the sort of 5th decade of retro game. Well, it wasn't retro gaming back then, was it? But it is now. The 5th decade of gaming has just started. What are your memories of it? You know, where did you sort of like come into gaming, etc.? What decade? What generation? When you look back, do you do so fondly, or are you firmly looking to the future and say all that stuff's in the past, it's dead, it's not worth playing? Or do you go back and do you play stuff again and again and again purely for the love of it? Because, you know, a game can be 100 gigs in size nowadays. It hasn't got the imagination or anything to hook you or grab you. You know, it's not really worth playing. Some of these old games, you know, keep you coming back time and time and time and time again, just to find a different way to beat it, just to find a new technique or something like that. Games that offer that, I tend to like really enjoy sort of like having a go at. Games like Dishonored, where I can just go around being a twat, finding different ways of killing people and having great fun. Really enjoy them. Yeah, I know I've missed loads out. I have just realised I haven't mentioned the Assassin's Creed games at all, but hey ho, that's how it goes. This was just an incredibly long ramble. So in 10 years' time, we'll be entering the 6th decade of gaming, and we'll all still be around, hopefully. I hope you enjoyed the video. I'm sorry about the performance of the camera and the lights and everything like that, but I've got to test it out, so I might as well test it out doing one of these. Thank you ever so much for watching. If you like the video, please let me know. If you wish to subscribe, please do so. But if you do subscribe, as ever, please take the time to join in with the conversation down below, because that's what it's all about. Thank you ever so much for watching. Take care. Goodbye.